Welcome, fellow travellers of the night, to another journey through time with the sleepy structures. Tonight, we leave behind the cliff dwellings of ancient America and travel to the golden sands of Egypt, where beneath the burning desert sun, human hands achieve something that still defies belief 4,500 years later. As you settle into your pillows tonight, let your mind drift back to a time when pharaohs were living gods, when the Nile was the lifeblood of the greatest civilization on Earth, and when one man's dream of immortality sparked the creation of the last surviving wonder of the ancient world. Close your eyes and imagine standing on the Giza plateau, where the desert wind carries whispers of ancient ambition, and where the Great Pyramid of Khufu stands as humanity's most impossible achievement, built with nothing but bronze tools, wooden ramps, and the sheer will of thousands of human souls. Tonight's journey will unfold like the slow, patient work of those ancient builders, layer by layer, stone by stone, mystery by mystery. So breathe deeply, let the desert winds carry away your daily concerns, and prepare to lose yourself in the greatest construction mystery in human history. Picture, if you will, the Royal Palace of Memphis, where morning light danced across polished granite floors and painted walls whispered stories of gods and kings. Here, in the year 2580 before Christ walked the earth, Pharaoh Khufu stood beneath towering columns and contemplated something that had never existed in the world of mortals, a monument to touch the realm of the gods themselves. Khufu was no ordinary king dreaming ordinary dreams. He was the divine ruler of the most powerful civilization on Earth, master of the Nile's life-giving waters, commander of knowledge that flowed from the great libraries of Memphis and Heliopolis. Yet even with all the wisdom of Egypt at his disposal, what he envisioned challenged the very limits of human possibility. The pharaoh's dream began with a simple but profound need: eternal life. Not the philosophical immortality that occupies modern minds, but the very real, very urgent requirement of ensuring his soul's safe passage through the treacherous underworld and his transformation into a star among the imperishable ones. This wasn't vanity, it was cosmic necessity. The pharaoh's successful resurrection would maintain the divine order that kept the Nile flooding, the sun rising, and Egypt prospering. Standing in his palace courtyard as the desert wind carried the scent of lotus blossoms from the royal gardens, Khufu gazed toward the western horizon, where the sun died each evening before being reborn in the east. There, on the Giza plateau, he would build his resurrection machine, his ladder to the stars, his proof that a mortal king could achieve divine immortality through sheer force of will and architectural perfection. But this would be no ordinary pyramid. Previous pharaohs had built impressive monuments, structures that rose hundreds of feet into the desert sky and required years of careful construction. Khufu's father, Sneferu, had built 3 pyramids, learning through trial and error the delicate balance between ambition and engineering reality. The bent pyramid stood as a humbling reminder of what happened when structural calculations proved inadequate, its changing angle mid-construction, a permanent testament to the limits of human knowledge. Khufu's vision transcended everything that had come before. He didn't simply want the largest pyramid ever built, he wanted to create something so massive, so precisely engineered, so mathematically perfect, that it would stand as undeniable proof of divine power made manifest in stone. He imagined a monument that would rise nearly 500 feet toward the heavens, taller than anything humanity would construct for the next 4,000 years. The scale bordered on madness. This pyramid would require over 2 million individual stone blocks, each one carved from living rock with bronze chisels and copper saws, each one weighing as much as a dozen elephants, each one transported across desert sands without wheels or beasts of burden capable of moving such impossible weights. The base would cover 13 acres, larger than many entire towns, and would be levelled with such precision that the difference between highest and lowest points would measure less than the width of a human thumb. To comprehend the audacity of this dream, imagine the perspective of Khufu's architects and engineers as they listened to their god-king describe his vision. They lived in a world where the tallest structures were measured in dozens of feet, not hundreds. They worked with tools of bronze and stone, without pulleys, without wheels, without any mechanical advantage beyond human muscle, wooden levers, and hemp rope. Yet their pharaoh was asking them to move mountains, to stack stones the size of modern automobiles nearly 500 feet into the sky, and to do it with such precision that the finished monument would be aligned to the cardinal directions within a fraction of a degree. The contemporary world of 2580 BC offered no precedents for such an undertaking. In Mesopotamia, the great ziggurats of Babylon and Ur represented the pinnacle of monumental architecture, yet the largest among them barely reached 200 feet in height. In the Indus Valley, sophisticated cities boasted advanced drainage systems and standardized brick construction, but nothing approaching the scale of Khufu's vision. Across the Mediterranean, the civilizations of Europe were still working primarily in wood and earth, their greatest monuments mere circles of standing stones. Egypt was proposing to attempt something unprecedented in human history, a construction project that would require the coordination of tens of thousands of workers across multiple decades, the quarrying and transport of millions of tons of stone, and engineering solutions to problems that had never been faced before. The logistics alone seemed impossible. Feeding and housing a workforce larger than the population of most ancient cities, maintaining quality control across millions of individual stone blocks, and organizing the complex sequence of activities needed to transform raw desert into humanity's greatest architectural achievement. Yet Khufu's dream demanded more than mere size. This pyramid would incorporate mathematical principles that seemed to encode the very structure of the universe itself. Its proportions would reflect the relationship between Earth's dimensions and celestial movements. Its passages would align precisely with specific stars, and its internal chambers would be positioned according to calculations that modern mathematicians still struggle to fully understand. The pyramid would serve as both tomb and resurrection machine, its every angle and measurement calculated to facilitate the pharaoh's transformation from mortal king to immortal star god. The ascending passages would guide his soul upward through the levels of the afterlife, while the descending passages would confuse and misdirect tomb robbers seeking to desecrate his eternal resting place. As Khufu shared his vision with the high priests of Ra and the master builders of Memphis, he could see the mixture of awe and terror in their eyes. They understood the religious necessity of the project, the cosmic importance of ensuring their god-king's successful resurrection. They also understood that failure would mean not just personal disgrace, but potential catastrophe for the entire kingdom, divine punishment that could bring famine, invasion, and the collapse of the cosmic order that made civilization possible. The pharaoh's dream would require the mobilization of Egypt's entire civilization. Farmers would abandon their fields during the Nile's flood season to quarry stone and build ramps. Craftsmen would dedicate their lives to carving blocks with precision measured in fractions of inches. Engineers would solve problems that challenged the limits of Bronze Age technology. Mathematicians would calculate angles and proportions that seemed to encode divine knowledge itself. The project would consume Egypt's wealth, organize her people, and test the very limits of human capability. It would be an act of faith as much as engineering, a belief that mortal hands guided by divine will could achieve the impossible. The Great Pyramid would rise as humanity's ultimate expression of organized ambition, proof that when an entire civilization focuses its energy and knowledge on a single goal, the results can transcend anything that seems possible within the constraints of available technology. As construction began on the Giza plateau, Khufu knew he was gambling with his kingdom's future and his own divine legacy. Success would ensure his immortality and establish Egypt as the greatest civilization in human history. Failure would leave him remembered as the pharaoh whose megalomaniacal dream bankrupted his kingdom and endangered the cosmic order he was sworn to protect. 5 years after Khufu first spoke his impossible dream into existence, the royal architects and priests gathered in the sacred chambers beneath the Temple of Ptah in Memphis. By flickering oil lamplight on papyrus scrolls that would preserve their calculations for eternity, they began translating divine vision into earthly measurements. What emerged from those midnight sessions was more than mere construction plans. It was a mathematical poem written in stone, a geometric prayer that would speak to the gods in the language of perfect proportions. The design that took shape was unlike anything attempted in human history, a fusion of religious symbolism, mathematical precision, and architectural audacity that challenged every assumption about what Bronze Age civilizations could conceive and execute. The pyramid would not simply be large, it would be perfect, its every measurement encoding relationships between earth and heaven, between human ambition and divine order, between the temporal world of mortals and the eternal realm of the gods. The base of the pyramid would form a perfect square, each side measuring 440 royal cubits in length. But this wasn't an arbitrary choice of dimension. The royal cubit, defined as the length from a man's elbow to the tip of his middle finger, had been refined through generations of Egyptian mathematical tradition to equal exactly 0.5236 meters. When multiplied by 440, the base perimeter would total 1,660 royal cubits, a number that encoded the relationship between the pyramid's earthly foundation and celestial movements tracked by Egyptian astronomers. The height would rise to 280 royal cubits, creating proportional relationships that seemed to encode fundamental mathematical constants. The ratio of the pyramid's perimeter to its height would approximate twice pi. The mysterious relationship between a circle's circumference and its diameter that wouldn't be formally defined by Greek mathematicians for another 2,000 years. Yet somehow, Egyptian architects working with Bronze Age tools and ancient mathematical traditions had embedded this cosmic constant into their design. The pyramid's slope would rise at an angle of 51 degrees and 52 minutes, an inclination so precise that its tangent would equal exactly 4p. This wasn't coincidence but deliberate design, requiring mathematical understanding that we're still struggling to fully comprehend. The angle wasn't chosen for structural convenience or aesthetic preference, but because it created proportional relationships that connected the pyramid's physical form to the mathematical principles that ancient Egyptians believed governed the universe itself. The orientation would achieve precision that challenges modern surveying techniques. The pyramid's sides would align with the cardinal, directions within 3/60th of a degree, an accuracy that required observational skills and mathematical calculations of extraordinary sophistication. To achieve this alignment, the architects would need to track the movement of circumpolar stars over multiple nights, using the star's apparent rotation around the celestial pole to establish true north with incredible precision. But the most mysterious aspect of the design lay in its astronomical alignments. The pyramid's passages would point towards specific stars that held profound religious significance in Egyptian cosmology. The descending passage would align with Alpha Draconis, the pole star of Khufu's era, while the ascending passage would point toward the constellation Orion, which Egyptians identified with Osiris, god of death and resurrection. These stellar alignments weren't mere symbolic gestures, but functional elements of the pyramid's purpose as a resurrection machine. According to Egyptian religious texts, the pharaoh's soul would travel along these precise pathways, guided by starlight toward its transformation into an imperishable star. The passages had to point exactly toward their target stars at the moment of the pharaoh's death, requiring astronomical calculations that accounted for the gradual precession of Earth's axis over centuries. The internal chamber system would create a three-dimensional maze of passages and rooms positioned according to calculations that modern architects find difficult to replicate. The Grand Gallery would rise at the same 26-degree angle as the ascending passage, its corbelled ceiling supported by perfectly fitted granite blocks weighing several tons each. The king's chamber would be positioned at the pyramid's geometric centre, its dimensions reflecting the same proportional relationships that governed the monument's external form. The precision required for these internal structures defied the technological capabilities of the Bronze Age. Chamber walls would be smoothed to within millimetres, across spans of several metres. Passages would maintain consistent dimensions throughout their length, with variations measured in fractions of inches. Granite blocks would be cut and fitted with tolerances that modern stonemasons, working with diamond-tipped power tools, find challenging to achieve. The mathematical sophistication embedded in the design suggested knowledge that seemed anachronistic for its time period. The ancient Egyptians working on Khufu's pyramid apparently understood geometric relationships that wouldn't be formally described by European mathematicians until the Renaissance. They calculated angles and proportions with precision that required trigonometric functions, yet they worked centuries before such mathematical tools were supposedly invented. The pyramid's design also encoded units of measurement that reflected Egyptian understanding of Earth's dimensions. The base perimeter, when divided by 2, would equal exactly 1 minute of latitude at Earth's equator, suggesting that Egyptian surveyors had calculated our planet's circumference with remarkable accuracy. This geodetic knowledge wouldn't be matched by other civilizations for thousands of years, yet somehow Bronze Age Egyptian architects had incorporated it into their pyramid's fundamental proportions. The acoustic properties built into the design revealed another layer of sophisticated planning. The king's chamber would resonate at specific frequencies when sound was introduced, creating harmonic effects that ancient Egyptians may have associated with the soul's transformation during the resurrection process. The chamber's dimensions weren't chosen randomly, but calculated to produce precise acoustic responses that enhanced the pyramid's function as a religious instrument. The structural engineering embedded in the design solved problems that wouldn't be formally addressed by architectural theory for millennia. The pyramid's internal passages and chambers would be surrounded by millions of tons of stone, yet the design distributed these loads so effectively that the internal spaces would remain intact for thousands of years. The architects had calculated stress distributions and load-bearing requirements using principles that wouldn't be systematically described until the development of modern structural engineering. The precision of the design extended to details that wouldn't be visible to casual observers, but were essential to the pyramid's religious function. The sarcophagus in the king's chamber would be positioned at the exact geometric center of the pyramid's base, its dimensions reflecting the same proportional relationships that governed the monument's overall design. Even the thickness of chamber walls would be calculated according to mathematical principles that ensured proper acoustic and symbolic properties. As the final design took shape on papyrus scrolls in the Temple of Ptah, the architects knew they had created something unprecedented in human history. This wasn't simply a large building or an impressive monument, but a three-dimensional mathematical equation solved in stone, a geometric proof of divine order made manifest through human craftsmanship. The pyramid would stand as testimony to Egyptian mathematical sophistication and religious devotion, proof that mortal minds guided by divine inspiration could conceive and execute projects that transcended the apparent limitations of their technological era. The design phase would consume 5 years of intensive calculation and planning, with teams of architects, mathematicians, and priests working to resolve countless technical challenges. Every measurement had to be perfect, every angle precisely calculated, every proportional relationship verified against both mathematical principles and religious requirements. There could be no mistakes, no approximations, no shortcuts that might compromise the pyramid's function as Khufu's resurrection. Machine and Egypt's eternal monument to divine order made manifest in stone. Dawn breaks like molten gold across the Giza plateau, and with it comes the sound that will echo through eternity. The rhythmic percussion of bronze against stone, 10,000 chisels singing their ancient song of creation. In the pale morning light, the limestone quarries stretch like great wounds in the earth, carved deep into the living bedrock where millions of years of compressed sea creatures wait to be transformed into immortality. Picture yourself standing at the edge of these vast excavations, breathing air thick with stone dust that glitters like powdered starlight in the early sun. Below you, hundreds of workers move like ants in organized chaos, their bronze tools flashing as they follow chalk lines drawn by master masons who can read stone like priests read sacred texts. Each man knows his role in this impossible symphony. Each hammer blow brings Khufu's dream one strike closer to reality. The quarry masters walk among their crews like generals surveying a battlefield, their trained eyes identifying the subtle variations in limestone that will determine each block's destiny. Here, a section of stone with perfect grain structure that will form part of the pyramid's outer casing, smooth as silk and white as moonlight. There, slightly softer stone that will form the inner core blocks, still strong enough to bear the weight of eternity, but easier for the workers to shape with their bronze tools. Listen to the quarry song, the deep resonant strikes of the heaviest hammers, the sharp ping of chisels following natural fracture lines, the scraping of copper saws cutting channels in the living rock. Between these mechanical rhythms you hear the human music, work songs passed down through generations, their ancient words helping teams coordinate their efforts as they lever massive blocks from their stone wombs. The extraction of each block is a birth attended by dozens of workers. First, the outline is marked with red ochre, geometric precision drawn on irregular stone surface. Then comes the patient work of separation, bronze-tipped tools following chalk lines with the concentration of surgeons. Wooden wedges are driven into carefully cut channels, then soaked with Nile water that swells the wood and splits the stone along predetermined lines, with cracks that sound like thunder across the plateau. When a block finally breaks free from its ancient bed, the moment arrives, like the birth of a new star. Workers gather around their creation, calloused hands running over surfaces that will outlast empires, checking for the hairline cracks that could doom months of labour. The best blocks earn approving nods from the quarry masters, while imperfect stones are set aside for inner courses, where small flaws won't compromise the pyramid's eternal perfection. But the Giza limestone, magnificent as it is, cannot satisfy all of Khufu's requirements. For the most critical elements of his pyramid, for the chambers that will house his golden sarcophagus and the passages that will guide his soul to the stars, only the hardest granite will suffice. And granite means Aswan, 500 miles up the Nile, where the red rock lies sleeping beneath the desert sun like the crystallized blood of the earth itself. Imagine the granite quarries of Aswan as a vision from another world. Here, the stone doesn't yield to bronze chisels but must be conquered through fire and patience. Workers build great bonfires directly on the granite surface, heating the rock until it glows like embers against the night sky. Then, as dawn approaches, they douse the heated stone with cold Nile water, the thermal shock creating fractures that ring across the quarry like bronze bells. The granite blocks that emerge from this process are monuments in themselves. Single stones weighing as much as 70 tons, their crystalline surfaces reflecting sunlight like faceted jewels. These behemoths require teams of 50 men just to move them from the quarry, face to the river's edge, their journey across the desert sand leaving furrows that mark the landscape like the footprints of sleeping giants. The transport of granite from Aswan to Giza represents one of humanity's first great logistical miracles. Picture the specially constructed barges, their cedar hulls reinforced with bronze fittings and sealed with pitch that gleams black as obsidian under the desert sun. These vessels, larger than any ships that have sailed the Nile before, must carry individual stones that weigh more than the entire cargo capacity of ordinary rivercraft. Loading a 70-ton granite block onto a barge requires engineering that pushes Bronze Age technology to its absolute limits. Teams of workers construct elaborate ramps of earth and stone, their slopes calculated with mathematical precision to allow the massive blocks to be rolled and levered aboard without crushing the vessel beneath their weight. The work takes days for each stone, every movement planned and executed with the care of a religious ceremony. When the granite barges finally depart as one, they travel downriver like floating mountains, their hulls riding so low in the water that wavelets lap against the stone cargo. The journey to Giza takes weeks, following the Nile's ancient current through landscapes that have never seen such massive objects in motion. Villagers along the riverbank gather to watch these impossible vessels pass, their occupants murmuring prayers to gods who might explain how mortal men could move such titanic weights. At the Giza harbour, specially constructed docks await the granite ships. Here, the engineering challenges of Aswan are repeated in reverse as the massive blocks are offloaded and prepared for their final journey to the pyramid site. Each stone must be moved with precision that allows no mistakes, for a single granite block dropped or cracked during transport could set the entire project back by months. The precision cutting that transforms raw stone into building blocks represents perhaps the most miraculous aspect of the entire operation. Working with copper saws, bronze chisels and abrasive sand, Egyptian stonemasons achieve tolerances that seem impossible for their technological era. Limestone blocks emerge from their workshops with surfaces so smooth they reflect images like mirrors, their edges so straight that a hair's width separates perfection from acceptable. The tools themselves tell stories of innovation born from necessity. Copper saws, their teeth worn smooth by constant use, cut stone through patient abrasion rather than cutting action. Bronze chisels, reforged nightly by smiths working by firelight, maintain their edges through careful tempering that balances hardness with durability. Wooden mallets, their striking surfaces reinforced with bronze plates, deliver precise blows that split stone along lines measured in fractions of inches. Each finished block bears the invisible signature of its creator's skill. The masons who shape these stones work with knowledge passed down through generations, their hands reading the grain and texture of each piece like scholars studying sacred texts. They know which stones will bear weight for millennia, and which contain hidden flaws that could compromise eternity itself. As blocks accumulate around the pyramid site, they create a landscape of geometric dreams waiting for architectural birth. Limestone and granite arranged in precise rows, each piece numbered and marked for its specific position in Khufu's resurrection machine. The quarrying phase has lasted 5 years, transforming millions of tons of raw stone into the building blocks of immortality, setting the stage for the even greater miracle of moving these impossible weights into their final positions 500 feet above the desert floor. The morning that would change the face of Earth forever begins before dawn, when 10,000 men gather around the base of what will become the Great Pyramid. In the pre-dawn darkness, their torches flicker like fallen stars across the Giza plateau, each flame illuminating faces marked by determination that borders on religious fervor. Today, they begin the impossible, moving 2.5 million stone blocks, each one a monument in itself, into a formation that will touch the realm of the gods. Picture yourself among these workers as the sun rises over the eastern desert, painting the limestone blocks around you in shades of gold and amber. Each stone waits like a sleeping giant, some weighing as much as 15 tons, others so massive that their transport will require the coordination of hundreds of men working in perfect harmony. The logistics of moving these impossible weights without wheels, without mechanical cranes, without any technology more sophisticated than rope and human muscle, represents humanity's first great triumph over the laws of physics. The ramps begin as lines drawn in desert sand by master engineers whose knowledge springs from generations of pyramid building, each one carrying lessons learned from earlier failures and successes. But these sketches in sand will become monuments themselves, earthwork constructions that in some places rise higher than the buildings of most ancient cities. The main ramp that spirals around the growing pyramid will ultimately climb nearly 500 feet into the desert sky, its gradient calculated with mathematical precision to allow teams of men to haul multi-ton blocks up slopes that seem to climb toward heaven itself. Watch as the first massive blocks begin their journey from quarry to construction site. Teams of 40 men gather around stones that dwarf modern automobiles, their hands gripping ropes thick as a man's wrist, their bodies straining against weight that defies human scale. These aren't ordinary labourers, but specialists trained in the art of moving mountains, their techniques refined through years of practice that have transformed impossible physics into routine miracles. The blocks move on wooden rollers cut from Lebanon cedar, each log carefully shaped and positioned to distribute crushing weight across desert sand that must bear loads far beyond anything in nature. The rollers themselves become consumable items, crushed and replaced as multi-ton stones roll across them, leaving behind wooden fragments that will be buried beneath the pyramid for eternity. The sound of this procession echoes across the plateau like thunder. The deep groaning of rope under impossible tension, the hollow rumble of stone rolling over wood, the rhythmic chanting of work songs that help teams coordinate their efforts against the crushing weight of limestone and granite. But moving blocks across level ground represents only the beginning of the challenge. The true miracle begins when these massive stones must climb the ramps that spiral around the growing pyramid, defying gravity itself as human muscle, and Bronze Age engineering lift millions of tons of stone into the sky, one impossible block at a time. Picture the main construction ramp as it takes shape. An artificial mountain built alongside the pyramid, its slopes precisely calculated to allow teams of men to haul massive blocks up gradients that rise steadily toward the heavens. The ramp itself consumes millions of tons of earth, stone, and timber, its construction representing an engineering project that would challenge modern earth-moving equipment. Yet it rises through human labour alone, teams of workers carrying baskets of earth and sand up slopes that grow steeper with each day's progress. The physics of hauling 15-ton blocks up these ramps challenges every assumption about Bronze Age capabilities. Teams of 60 men strain against ropes, their combined strength barely sufficient to overcome the friction and weight that resist their efforts. Behind them, other workers pour water on the ramp surface, creating lubrication that reduces friction while turning desert sand into treacherous mud that threatens to send massive blocks sliding backward into catastrophe. The coordination required for these operations represents organizational achievement that rivals the engineering itself. Foremen stand at intervals along the ramps, their voices coordinating the efforts of dozens of teams working simultaneously. Work songs echo across the construction site, their ancient rhythms helping workers synchronize their pulling against impossible weights. Horn signals communicate across distances too great for human voices, coordinating the complex choreography of men and stone that must proceed without error lest months of progress be destroyed in moments of catastrophic failure. When blocks finally reach their designated positions on the growing pyramid, the placement process becomes a precision operation that allows no margin for error. Stone must be positioned within fractions of inches, their surfaces aligned with tolerances that seem impossible to achieve without modern surveying instruments. Teams of stonemasons wait with bronze crowbars and wooden levers, making final adjustments that ensure each block sits in perfect harmony with its neighbours, creating joints so tight that knife blades cannot slip between them. The internal blocks, those that will disappear forever within the pyramid's mass, might seem less critical than the precision casing stones that will form the outer surface. Yet even these hidden elements must be positioned with care that borders on obsession. Each internal block becomes part of the structural system that will support millions of tons of stone above it, their placement requiring engineering calculations that distribute loads across the pyramid's entire mass. The seasonal rhythms of ancient Egypt impose their own demands on the construction process. During the Nile's annual flood, when the river transforms the delta into a temporary sea, thousands of farmers join the construction workforce, their agricultural skills translated into the patient work of moving stone. These seasonal workers bring different skills and perspectives, their knowledge of irrigation and earthwork contributing to the ramp construction and site preparation that keeps the project moving forward. But the flood season also brings unique challenges. Increased humidity affects the wooden machinery, causing expansion and contraction that threatens precision operations. The higher water table changes the behavior of mud brick ramps, requiring constant maintenance and adjustment. Supply deliveries become more complex as the flooded landscape alters traditional transportation routes, forcing logistics coordinators to develop alternative methods for moving materials and supplies to the construction site. As the pyramid grows higher, the challenges multiply exponentially. Blocks that once required the efforts of 40 men now need 60 or more as the ramps become steeper and the distance is greater. The margin for error shrinks as a dropped block could destroy months of work and potentially kill dozens of workers. The precision required for placement becomes more critical as the pyramid's geometry demands increasingly exact positioning to maintain the mathematical relationships encoded in its design. The tools themselves evolve under the pressure of impossible demands. Ropes, the lifelines that connect human muscle to massive stone, must be constantly replaced as the crushing loads exceed their breaking strength. Bronze tools, pushed beyond their design limits, require nightly maintenance by smiths, who work through the darkness to repair and replace equipment destroyed by the day's impossible tasks. Wooden machinery, stressed by loads that dwarf normal applications, splinters and fails with regularity that demands constant innovation and replacement. Yet somehow, through Bronze Age ingenuity and organizational skills that modern project managers would envy, the blocks continue their journey skyward. Each day brings new solutions to unprecedented problems, new techniques for accomplishing what should be impossible, new proof that human determination guided by divine inspiration can achieve miracles that challenge the very laws of physics. The 5-year period of intensive block placement transforms the Giza Plateau into humanity's first great construction site, a landscape of ramps and machinery, supply depots and workshops that represents the mobilization of an entire civilization's resources toward a single impossible goal. When this phase finally concludes, over 2 million blocks will have completed their journey from quarry to sky, each one a testament to the power of human cooperation and the miracles that become possible when Bronze Age engineering meets divine ambition. Imagine trying to level a parking lot the size of 10 football fields using only rope, wooden stakes, and water. Sounds impossible? Well, the ancient Egyptians didn't just level such an area, they achieved precision that would make modern construction crews weep with envy. We're talking about accuracy within 2.1 centimeters across a base that stretches 230 meters in each direction. That's like balancing a coin on its edge and keeping it perfectly level across the length of 2 city blocks. Picture yourself standing on the Giza Plateau in 2545 BC, watching thousands of workers attack the desert bedrock with bronze tools that seem laughably inadequate for the task ahead. The limestone bedrock, formed from ancient sea creatures compressed over millions of years, must be carved away with surgical precision to create a foundation that will support 6.5 million tons of stone for the next 4.5 millennia. The leveling process begins like a sacred ritual. Master engineers stretch ropes across the designated area, creating a grid that divides the massive foundation into manageable sections. But here's where it gets interesting. How do you ensure something is perfectly level when you don't have a spirit level, a laser guide, or even a basic bubble level? The answer lies in humanity's oldest engineering tool, water. Egyptian engineers flood shallow channels carved into the bedrock using water's natural tendency to find its own level as their guide. Picture these water-filled channels crisscrossing the construction site like a geometric spiderweb, each one reflecting the desert sky while revealing high spots that must be carved away and low spots that must be filled. It's ingenious, really. Nature herself becomes their surveying instrument, providing accuracy that Bronze Age technology couldn't achieve through any other method. But wait, there's more complexity here that would make your head spin. The foundation isn't just level, it's oriented to the cardinal directions with precision that requires observational astronomy worthy of a modern observatory. The pyramid's sides align with true north within 3 minutes and 6 seconds of arc. To put that in perspective, if you stood at one corner of the pyramid and looked along its edge toward the opposite corner, your line of sight would be off from perfect cardinal alignment by less than the width of a human hair held at arm's length. How did they achieve this astronomical precision without telescopes, without GPS, without any of the tools we consider essential for accurate surveying? Picture Egyptian astronomers spending months on the plateau, tracking the apparent movement of circumpolar stars around the celestial pole. Night after night they observe stars that never set below the horizon, using their circular paths to establish true north with accuracy that wouldn't be matched again for thousands of years. The actual excavation work would test the patience of saints. Workers using copper chisels and bronze hammers must remove irregular bedrock one chip at a time, following the water level guides with precision measured in millimeters. Every high spot must be carefully carved away, every surface checked and rechecked against the water-filled channels that serve as their reference guides. One mistake, one section left too high or carved too deep, could throw off the entire pyramid's geometry. Think about the coordination required here. Hundreds of stonemasons working simultaneously across 13 acres of bedrock, each one responsible for achieving precision that allows no margin for error. They can't just hack away at the stone and hope for the best. Every strike of hammer against chisel must be controlled, measured, part of a systematic approach that gradually transforms irregular bedrock into a foundation platform precise enough to support one of the engineering marvels of the ancient world. The corners present special challenges that would give modern engineers nightmares. These aren't just any corners, but points that must be positioned with mathematical precision to create a perfect square oriented exactly to the cardinal directions. The margin for error? Practically zero. If the corners are off by even a few centimeters, the error will magnify as the pyramid rises, potentially throwing off the entire structure's geometry by the time it reaches its full height. Now comes the part that really defies belief. Building a 48-story structure using nothing but muscle power, rope, and Bronze Age ingenuity. Want to know just how crazy this was? The Empire State Building, completed in 1931 with every advantage of modern technology, took 13 months to build. Khufu's pyramid, containing more than twice as much stone and built with bronze tools, took approximately 20 years. That means Egyptian workers were moving massive stone blocks into position at a rate of 1 every 2 to 3 minutes, 10 hours a day, for 2 decades straight. Picture the construction site as the pyramid begins its serious climb toward the heavens. The base courses, each one consisting of blocks weighing between 2 and 15 tons, must be laid with precision that allows joints so tight you can't slip a knife blade between them. But here's what really bends your mind. These aren't just random stones stacked on top of each other. Each block is custom cut to fit its specific position, with surfaces dressed to tolerances measured in millimeters. How do you cut limestone blocks to such precision using copper saws and bronze chisels? The answer involves techniques that seem almost magical to our power tool-dependent minds. Egyptian stonemasons work with abrasive sand, essentially using the desert itself as their cutting medium. They drag copper saws back and forth through grooves in the stone, the sand acting like countless tiny cutting teeth that gradually wear away limestone with patience, that spans months for a single block. But the real engineering miracle happens as the pyramid climbs above the plateau. Remember, we're not just stacking blocks here, we're creating internal passages, chambers, and architectural features that require three-dimensional precision in stone construction. The Grand Gallery, that magnificent ascending passage that rises at a 26-degree angle through the heart of the pyramid, must be built as the surrounding structure takes shape, each corbelled stone positioned to support massive weight while maintaining architectural elegance. Let's talk about the logistics for a moment, because they're absolutely mind-boggling. As the pyramid grows taller, every single stone must travel farther and higher to reach its destination. A block destined for the pyramid's upper levels doesn't just move from quarry to construction site. It must climb nearly 500 feet up ramps that spiral around the growing structure like a stone highway ascending into the sky. Picture these ramps. Artificial mountains built alongside the pyramid, their slopes precisely calculated to allow teams of men to haul multi-ton blocks, up gradients that challenge human endurance. The main ramp ultimately rises higher than most ancient buildings, its construction consuming millions of tons of earth, stone, and timber. It's a pyramid built to build a pyramid, an engineering project that would be impressive in its own right, even without considering its ultimate purpose. Now here's a question that might keep you awake tonight. How do you maintain quality control when you're working with over 2 million individual stone blocks? There's no room for mistakes here. Every block must fit perfectly with its neighbours. Every course must be level and aligned. Every joint must be tight enough to last for millennia. One poorly fitted stone could create stress concentrations that might cause structural problems hundreds of blocks later. The answer lies in Egyptian craftsmanship that borders on obsession. Each block receives individual attention from skilled stonemasons who spend days or weeks preparing its surfaces for placement. Trial fitting, adjustment, refinement, more trial fitting until the stone achieves the precision required for its eternal role in Khufu's resurrection machine. It's artisanship applied to industrial-scale construction, individual craftsmanship multiplied across millions of components. The internal chambers present challenges that push Bronze Age engineering to its absolute limits. The king's chamber, positioned at the pyramid's geometric heart, must be built while surrounded by millions of tons of stone that could crush it in an instant if the structural calculations prove inadequate. The chamber walls, built from granite blocks transported 500 miles from Aswan, must support ceiling stones that weigh over 70 tons each. Think about that for a moment. 70-ton granite beams positioned with precision, measured in millimeters, 300 feet above the desert floor, using only ropes, wooden levers, and human muscle. Each beam must be not just lifted into position, but precisely aligned with its neighbors to create a roof that will remain stable for thousands of years under the crushing weight of the pyramid above. The Grand Gallery represents perhaps the most sophisticated piece of stone architecture in the ancient world. This ascending passage, 30 feet high and nearly 150 feet long, features corbelled walls that rise in 7 perfectly measured steps, each one reducing the passage width while maintaining structural integrity. The precision of this stonework, with blocks fitted so tightly that their joints are barely visible, required engineering calculations and construction techniques that seem anachronistic for the Bronze Age. But here's what really challenges our understanding. How did workers build these internal features while the pyramid grew around them? The chambers and passages weren't added after the pyramid was complete. They were integrated into the structure as it rose, stone by stone, course by course. This required three-dimensional planning and construction coordination that modern project managers, with all their computer modeling and sophisticated scheduling software, would find daunting. As the pyramid climbs toward its full height, each new course presents exponentially greater challenges. Blocks must travel farther, climb higher, and be positioned with greater precision as the margin for error shrinks with altitude. The workers themselves must adapt to increasingly dangerous conditions, labouring on narrow ledges hundreds of feet above the desert floor, where a single misstep could mean death, and a dropped tool could kill dozens of workers below. Yet somehow, through Bronze Age ingenuity and organisational skills that seem almost supernatural, the pyramid continues its steady climb toward the stars. Each day brings new solutions to unprecedented problems, new techniques for accomplishing the impossible, new proof that human determination can achieve miracles that defy both physics and common sense. The 5-year construction period transforms the Giza Plateau into humanity's first skyscraper construction site, a vertical city of ramps and scaffolding, workshops and supply depots that represents the mobilization of an entire civilization's resources toward a single impossible dream. When this phase concludes, the pyramid will stand nearly complete, its massive bulk rising toward heaven as testimony to what Bronze Age engineering could accomplish when guided by divine ambition and unlimited human determination. You know what's funny about most people's understanding of the Great Pyramid? They think it was just one big stone triangle sitting alone in the desert like some ancient monument to ego. But here's the reality that might surprise you. The Great Pyramid was never meant to stand alone. It was the centerpiece of an entire sacred city, a complex of temples, smaller pyramids, and mysterious structures that transformed the Giza Plateau into humanity's first theme park dedicated to eternal life. Picture yourself approaching Giza in 2530 BC, not as the tourist destination of scattered ruins we know today, but as a thriving religious complex buzzing with activity. The Great Pyramid dominates the landscape like a man-made mountain, but surrounding it spreads an entire architectural ecosystem designed to serve Khufu's resurrection and eternal rule as a star god among the imperishable ones. The mortuary temple attached to the pyramid's eastern face represents engineering ambition that rivals the pyramid itself. This isn't some simple chapel, but a massive structure built from granite blocks that each weigh several tons, transported 500 miles from the Aswan quarries, specifically for this sacred purpose. The temple's columns, carved from single pieces of red granite, rise 40 feet into the desert sky, their surfaces polished to mirror-like perfection that reflects the rising sun like beacons calling to the gods. But here's where it gets really interesting. The mortuary temple connects to another temple nearly half a mile away through a covered causeway that represents one of the most sophisticated construction projects in the ancient world. This causeway, built from limestone blocks and roofed with massive stone slabs, creates a protected pathway that stretches across the desert, like a stone tunnel linking Earth to heaven. Walking through this causeway would be like entering another world. The walls, decorated with painted reliefs showing Khufu's divine transformation, glow with colours that seem to pulse with supernatural life in the dim light filtering through carefully positioned openings. The floor, paved with polished limestone, reflects these images like a sacred mirror, creating the illusion that you're walking not just through a tunnel, but through the very pathway that Khufu's soul will travel during his resurrection journey. The Valley Temple at the causeway's eastern end presents visitors with their first glimpse of architectural perfection that seems almost alien in its precision. Built entirely from granite blocks, some weighing over 100 tons, this temple achieves construction tolerances that modern builders find difficult to replicate. The joints between massive stone blocks are so tight that you can't insert a piece of paper between them, yet these stones were fitted using only bronze tools and human labour. Now let's talk about something that really bends the mind. How do you move 100-ton granite blocks with Bronze Age technology? We're talking about stones that weigh as much as 60 modern automobiles, transported 500 miles up the Nile, then moved from the river harbour to their final positions using only ropes, wooden rollers, and human muscle. The logistics alone would challenge modern heavy-lifting equipment, yet somehow Egyptian engineers accomplished this impossible feat using techniques that we're still struggling to understand. The interior of the Valley Temple creates an atmosphere that can only be described as otherworldly. Granite walls, polished to mirror-like perfection, reflect light from carefully positioned openings to create an environment that seems to glow from within. The floor, paved with massive granite slabs fitted with mathematical precision, reflects these walls like black water, creating the illusion that visitors are walking through a hall of mirrors that extends infinitely in all directions. But wait, there's more complexity here that archaeologists are still trying to understand. The Queen's Pyramids, 3 smaller but still impressive structures, arranged south of the Great Pyramid, aren't random additions but integral parts of the complex's religious function. Each pyramid, though much smaller than Khufu's monument, required the same precision engineering and construction techniques, their proportions calculated according to mathematical relationships that connect them to the main pyramid's cosmic symbolism. These Queen's Pyramids weren't built for random royal women, but for specific female members of Khufu's family, whose eternal presence was essential for his successful resurrection. Each pyramid contains its own burial chamber, its own system of passages, its own carefully calculated astronomical alignments that contribute to the complex's overall function as a resurrection machine. And then there's the Sphinx. Oh, the Sphinx. Here's where things get really mysterious, because nobody can agree when this incredible monument was actually carved. Officially, it's supposed to be younger than the pyramids, carved during a later pharaoh's reign. But geological evidence suggests weathering patterns that could only result from thousands of years of rainfall in a climate much wetter than anything Egypt has experienced in recorded history. Picture the Sphinx as it might have appeared when first completed. A massive lion's body with a human head, carved from a single piece of limestone that originally stood as a natural hill on the Giza plateau. But this wasn't just decorative sculpture. The Sphinx faces due east, positioned to greet the rising sun each morning, its gaze fixed on the horizon where Ra begins his daily journey across the sky. The symbolism is profound. The lion represents royal power, the human head represents divine intelligence, and the Eastern orientation connects the monument to the daily cycle of death and resurrection that governs Egyptian religious belief. The precision of the Sphinx's carving defies easy explanation. Working with bronze tools and copper chisels, Egyptian sculptors created facial features that maintain perfect proportion despite the monument's colossal scale. The eyes, each one larger than a human being, gaze eastward with an expression that seems to change with the light, sometimes serene, sometimes mysterious, always commanding attention from viewers who feel dwarfed by its massive presence. But here's what really challenges our understanding. The Sphinx sits in an artificial hollow, carved from the surrounding bedrock, creating an amphitheatre-like setting that required the removal of thousands of tons of stone. This wasn't accidental, but deliberate landscape architecture that transformed the natural plateau into a carefully designed sacred environment. The removed stone didn't go to waste, but provided building material for nearby structures, demonstrating the integrated planning that governed the entire complex's construction. The boat pits discovered around the Great Pyramid add another layer of mystery to an already incomprehensible sight. These aren't just holes in the ground, but carefully carved chambers that contained full-sized wooden ships, disassembled and buried with the precision of sacred relics. The largest boat, when reconstructed, measured over 140 feet in length, built from Lebanon cedar planks fitted together without a single nail, using only wooden dowels and rope lashings. Why bury boats next to a pyramid in the middle of the desert? The answer lies in Egyptian religious belief about the pharaoh's journey through the afterlife. These solar boats would carry Khufu's soul across the celestial waters that separate the world of the living from the realm of the dead, their presence ensuring that the god-king would have transportation worthy of his divine status during his eternal journey among the stars. The entire Giza complex represents something unprecedented in human history. a complete sacred landscape designed and built according to a unified plan that integrates architecture, astronomy, and religious symbolism into a single coherent statement about divine power and eternal life. Every structure, every alignment, every proportion contributes to an overall design that transforms the natural plateau into a man-made representation of the cosmos itself. As the complex neared completion around 2530 BC, visitors approaching from the Nile would encounter a sight unlike anything else in the ancient world. The Great Pyramid, its smooth limestone casing gleaming like white fire in the desert sun, dominated a landscape of temples and smaller pyramids that created a sacred city dedicated entirely to Khufu's eternal glory and the maintenance of cosmic order through his successful resurrection. After 20 years of labour that mobilised an entire civilization, after moving 2.5 million stone blocks using only bronze tools and human determination, after solving engineering problems that still challenge modern understanding, the moment of ultimate triumph finally arrives. But here's what might surprise you. The completion of the Great Pyramid wasn't celebrated with fireworks and champagne. Instead, it culminated in one of the most solemn and sacred ceremonies in human history, a ritual that would determine whether Khufu's impossible dream had truly achieved its divine purpose. Picture the Giza Plateau in the final months of construction, as workers apply the finishing touches that will transform a massive pile of stone blocks into humanity's most perfect architectural achievement. The smooth limestone casing stones, each one cut and polished to mirror-like perfection, are fitted over the pyramid's stepped core with precision that allows joints measured in fractions of millimeters. When complete, the pyramid's surface will shine like white fire in the desert sun, visible from miles away as a beacon proclaiming divine power made manifest in stone. But before we get to the grand finale, let's talk about that capstone, because its placement represents perhaps the most dramatic moment in ancient construction history. Imagine trying to position a several-ton carved stone at the apex of a structure that rises nearly 500 feet into the sky, using only ropes, wooden levers, and human muscle. There's no room for error here. If the capstone isn't positioned perfectly, if its alignment is off by even a few degrees, the entire pyramid's symbolic function could be compromised. The capstone itself, possibly covered in electrum or gold to catch and reflect the sun's rays, must be lifted to a height that wouldn't be matched by human construction for another 4,000 years. Picture the scene. Hundreds of workers coordinating their efforts on ramps and platforms that have taken months to construct, their every movement choreographed with precision that allows no mistakes. The margin for error has shrunk to zero because a dropped capstone could destroy not just months of work, but the entire symbolic crown of Khufu's resurrection machine. When the capstone finally settles into its eternal position, completing the pyramid's geometry with mathematical perfection that encodes the very structure of the cosmos, the moment marks more than architectural achievement. It represents the successful completion of humanity's most ambitious attempt to bridge the gap between mortal existence and divine immortality, between earthly construction and cosmic order. Now comes the part that really tests ancient Egyptian engineering, sealing the internal passages and chambers with security measures designed to protect Khufu's burial for eternity. But here's the challenge that would make modern security experts weep. How do you create an impregnable fortress when the very people responsible for its security are the same ones who know all its secrets? The ceiling of the pyramid's interior represents engineering psychology as much as physical construction. Multiple blocking systems, hidden passages, false chambers, and misdirection corridors create a three-dimensional maze designed to confuse and frustrate tomb robbers while protecting the pharaoh's eternal rest. But these systems must be installed by the same workers who built them, creating security challenges that require solutions bordering on genius. Some passages are sealed with massive granite plugs that slide into position, using gravity and Bronze Age machinery, creating barriers that seem almost impossible to remove without destroying the surrounding structure. Other entrances are concealed behind false walls that blend seamlessly with the surrounding masonry, their locations known only to the high priest responsible for the pyramid's final consecration. The preparation of Khufu's burial chamber transforms the king's chamber into a sacred space that rivals the Holy of Holies in any ancient temple. The granite sarcophagus, carved from a single block of red stone and polished to jewel-like perfection, waits to receive the pharaoh's mummified remains. But this isn't just a stone box. Its proportions reflect the same mathematical relationships that govern the pyramid's overall design. Its position calculated to place Khufu's body at the exact geometric center of the entire structure. The burial ceremony itself, when Khufu finally begins his journey to the afterlife, represents the culmination of decades of preparation and the ultimate test of whether the pyramid will fulfill its intended function. Picture the solemn procession as the pharaoh's mummy, wrapped in gold-threaded linen and adorned with jewelry that represents the wealth of the entire kingdom, travels through passages that have been designed specifically for this moment. The religious rituals surrounding Khufu's burial draw upon thousands of years of Egyptian spiritual tradition, but they're enhanced by the pyramid's unique properties as a resurrection machine. The ascending passages guide the pharaoh's soul upward toward the stars, while the mathematical precision of the chamber alignments ensures that cosmic forces will aid in his transformation from mortal king to eternal god. But here's where things get mysterious in ways that still puzzle archaeologists. The evidence suggests that the Great Pyramid's burial chamber was robbed in ancient times, possibly within centuries of Khufu's interment. How is this possible? How could tomb robbers defeat security measures that had taken decades to plan and implement? The answer reveals uncomfortable truths about the limits of ancient security technology, and perhaps the involvement of people who knew the pyramid's secrets intimately. The violation of Khufu's tomb represents more than simple theft. It challenges the very foundation of Egyptian religious belief, suggesting that even the most elaborate preparations for eternal life could be defeated by human greed and determination. The empty sarcophagus that modern visitors see today bears silent witness to this ancient crime, its violated sanctity a reminder that no human achievement, however magnificent, can guarantee permanence in a world where everything eventually changes. Yet the pyramid's function transcends even the fate of its intended occupant. As the casing stones reflect the desert's sun, and the internal passages maintain their precise astronomical alignments, the structure continues to fulfill its role as a cosmic instrument, a stone calendar that marks the passage of time and the eternal cycles that govern both earthly and celestial existence. The completion of the Great Pyramid around 2525 BC marks not just the end of construction, but the beginning of its role as humanity's most enduring monument to the possibility of achieving the impossible. The workers who had dedicated decades of their lives to this project could finally stand back and marvel at what they had accomplished. A structure so massive, so precisely engineered, so mathematically perfect that it would inspire wonder and disbelief for the next 4.5 millennia. As the construction ramps are dismantled and the workforce disperses to other projects, the Great Pyramid stands complete as testimony to what Bronze Age civilization could achieve when guided by unlimited ambition and divine inspiration. It represents the successful completion of humanity's most audacious architectural dream, proof that mortal hands, guided by immortal vision, can create monuments that transcend the apparent limitations of their technological era and speak across centuries to future generations who will struggle to understand how such impossible achievements were ever accomplished. For 45 centuries, the Great Pyramid has stood like a stone riddle carved against the desert sky, challenging every generation to solve mysteries that seem to deepen rather than clarify with each passing age. Tonight, as we reach the end of our journey through time, we arrive at perhaps the greatest puzzle of all. How has this monument survived wars, earthquakes, climate changes, and the rise and fall of entire civilizations to remain standing as the last survivor of the seven wonders of the ancient world? Picture the pyramid as Khufu intended it, gleaming white in the desert sun with its smooth limestone casing intact, its capstone catching the first rays of dawn like a beacon calling to the gods. For nearly 1,000 years, this magnificent site dominated the Giza Plateau, inspiring awe in visitors who travelled from across the known world to witness what seemed impossible, a man-made mountain that touched the realm of the divine. But even in ancient times, the pyramid's perfection attracted unwanted attention. Tomb robbers, those persistent enemies of eternal rest, began their assault on Khufu's security measures within centuries of his burial. Armed with determination, bronze tools, and inside knowledge that suggests corruption, among the pyramid's guardians, these ancient thieves managed to penetrate defenses that had taken decades to design and implement. The violation of the king's chamber represents one of history's most audacious crimes, a theft that targeted not just gold and jewels, but the very essence of divine kingship itself. When these robbers finally broke through the granite barriers and discovered Khufu's burial chamber, they found treasures beyond imagination. Golden funerary masks, jewellery embedded with precious stones, ceremonial weapons crafted by master artisans, and magical amulets designed to protect the pharaoh's soul during its journey through the afterlife. Yet the greatest mystery isn't what the tomb robbers took, but what they left behind. An empty sarcophagus that has puzzled visitors for thousands of years. Was Khufu's mummy destroyed by thieves seeking to strip away its golden wrappings? Was it hidden elsewhere by loyal priests who anticipated the tomb's violation? Or does the empty sarcophagus hold deeper secrets about the pyramid's true purpose that we still don't understand? As centuries passed and Egypt's power waned, the pyramid began its slow transformation from sacred monument to curiosity. The smooth limestone casing, that brilliant white surface that had made the pyramid shine like a star, was gradually stripped away by later builders who needed ready-cut stone for their own projects. Medieval Cairo, that great city rising along the Nile, was built partly from blocks that had once formed the pyramid's perfect exterior, each stolen stone carrying away a piece of ancient perfection. By the time Arab scholars first seriously studied the pyramid in the 9th century AD, its smooth sides had been replaced by the stepped appearance we know today, the underlying core blocks exposed like the bones of some massive prehistoric creature. Yet even in this diminished state, the pyramid's scale and precision continue to inspire wonder and wild speculation about its origins and purpose. Here's where things get really interesting from a human psychology perspective. The more we learn about the Great Pyramid, the more people seem convinced that it couldn't possibly be the work of ancient humans. Despite overwhelming archaeological evidence, despite detailed understanding of Egyptian construction techniques, despite the discovery of the very quarries where the blocks were cut and the ramps where they were moved, millions of people refuse to believe that Bronze Age civilization could have achieved such architectural perfection. Why does the pyramid challenge our assumptions so fundamentally? Perhaps because it forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about the capabilities of ancient peoples, whom we prefer to imagine as primitive ancestors, stumbling toward the enlightenment of modern civilization. The Great Pyramid stands as undeniable proof that sophisticated engineering, mathematical knowledge, and organizational skills aren't exclusive products of our technological age. The alternative theories that have proliferated around the pyramid reveal more about modern anxieties than ancient realities. Alien intervention, lost super-civilizations, anti-gravity technology, power plants disguised as tombs. These speculations multiply like desert mirages, always retreating when examined closely, but never quite disappearing from popular imagination. But let's be honest about what makes these theories so appealing. They resolve the cognitive dissonance created by the pyramid's existence. If ancient humans couldn't possibly have built such a perfect structure, then obviously someone else must have done it. The problem with this logic is that it requires us to ignore everything we actually know about Egyptian civilization in favor of explanations that have no supporting evidence whatsoever. The truth is simultaneously more mundane and more inspiring than alien intervention. The Great Pyramid represents what human beings can accomplish when an entire civilization focuses its energy, knowledge, and resources on a single goal. It's not proof of ancient astronauts, but testimony to the power of organized human effort, guided by mathematical precision and sustained by absolute determination. Modern archaeological techniques continue to reveal new secrets hidden within the pyramid's massive bulk. Ground-penetrating radar has detected previously unknown chambers and passages, while thermal imaging reveals temperature variations that suggest hidden spaces within the structure. Each new discovery adds complexity to our understanding, while raising fresh questions about construction techniques and architectural purposes that we're still struggling to comprehend. Recent discoveries have included the possible existence of a large void above the Grand Gallery, detected through cosmic ray imaging that reveals density variations within the pyramid's mass. This chamber, if it exists, could contain artifacts or architectural features that might finally answer some of the questions that have puzzled researchers for centuries. Yet even these modern investigative techniques must proceed carefully, because the pyramid remains a fragile monument that could be damaged by invasive exploration methods. The Great Pyramid's influence on human imagination extends far beyond archaeology and ancient history. It has inspired countless works of literature, art, and architecture, its perfect proportions and mysterious purpose serving as a symbol of human aspiration and the quest for immortality. From Napoleon's soldiers calculating its volume to modern architects studying its proportional relationships, the pyramid continues to educate and inspire new generations of builders and dreamers. Mathematical analysis of the pyramid's dimensions continues to yield surprising insights into ancient Egyptian knowledge. The structure encodes not just basic geometric relationships, but complex mathematical constants that weren't formally described by European scholars until thousands of years later. Pi, the golden ratio, the relationship between Earth's dimensions and celestial mechanics, all appear to be embedded in the pyramid's proportions with precision that suggests sophisticated understanding of mathematical principles we associate with much later periods in human development. The pyramid's astronomical alignments remain as precise today as they were 45 centuries ago, its passages still pointing toward the same stars that guided Khufu's soul on its journey to immortality. The slow precession of Earth's axis has shifted these alignments slightly over the millennia, but careful calculations can still trace the exact stellar positions that the pyramid's builders used to orient their creation with cosmic precision. Conservation efforts to preserve the Great Pyramid for future generations face challenges that would have seemed impossible to its ancient builders. Air pollution from modern Cairo threatens the remaining limestone blocks with chemical erosion, while millions of tourists annually create vibrations and humidity changes that gradually weaken the ancient stonework. The pyramid that survived earthquakes, wars, and climate changes now faces new threats from the very civilization that seeks to study and preserve it. Yet despite these modern challenges, the Great Pyramid endures as humanity's most impressive architectural achievement, a monument that continues to inspire wonder, speculation, and humbling recognition of what our species can accomplish when guided by vision that transcends the limitations of available technology. It stands not as a relic of a dead civilization, but as a bridge connecting us to ancestors whose ambitions and achievements continue to challenge our understanding of human potential. As you drift towards sleep tonight, let your imagination carry you back to that moment 45 centuries ago when the last block was positioned, the final passage sealed, and Khufu's impossible dream became eternal reality. Picture the pyramid as it stood then, perfect, complete, shining like a star fallen to earth, testament to the power of human determination to achieve the impossible. The Great Pyramid teaches us that the boundaries of possibility exist only in our minds, that what seems impossible to one generation can become routine accomplishment for the next, and that the greatest monuments aren't built by superhuman beings or alien visitors, but by ordinary humans inspired by extraordinary dreams and willing to dedicate their lives to making those dreams reality. In the silence of the desert night, where stars wheel overhead in the same patterns that guided ancient astronomers, the Great Pyramid stands as eternal proof that human beings can touch the divine through patience, precision, and the absolute determination to achieve perfection. It reminds us that we are descended from builders and dreamers, mathematicians and astronomers, whose greatest achievement wasn't just moving stone, but moving the boundaries of what seemed possible for their species. Sleep well, knowing that the same human spirit that built cities in the sky, with bronze tools and carried massive stones to impossible heights, lives on in every person who dares to dream beyond the limitations of their circumstances. The Great Pyramid stands not just as a monument to one pharaoh's quest for immortality, but as eternal testimony to the godlike potential that lies dormant within every human soul, waiting for the right moment, the right inspiration, the right combination of vision and determination to build something impossible, something perfect, something that will endure across the centuries as proof that we were here and that we built monuments worthy of the stars. And in the morning, when sunlight once again illuminates the ancient stones of Giza, the Great Pyramid will continue its eternal vigil, still challenging visitors to solve its mysteries, still inspiring wonder at what human hands can accomplish, still standing as the last survivor of the ancient world's 7 wonders, and still whispering across the millennia that the greatest limitations on human achievement exist not in the world around us, but in the boundaries we place on our own imagination and determination. Good night, fellow travellers, and may your dreams be filled with the timeless inspiration of those ancient builders who looked at an empty desert and saw the foundation for touching eternity, who faced impossible challenges with Bronze Age tools and absolute faith, and who created something so perfect, so enduring, so magnificent, that 45 centuries later, we still struggle to understand how they transformed divine vision into imperishable stone reality.